teaching the teachers. So we got to know each other through that, but then, okay, I have to do something. But I then ended up doing a master's in ESL and actually started the program elsewhere because they did not have that program at UK when I started. And Francis was kind enough to offer me assistance during my master's thesis. And we did this project together with which he was very helpful. And he's always been just a mentor to me. And he's a very knowledgeable person, particularly about what I think he's going to talk about tonight, which is memory and language learning. And Francis, I'm going to just let you talk about yourself, but okay. We're honored to have you here.
And Francis, don't worry, people keep on coming, you know?
Okay, good. I'm familiar with that pattern, yes.
Okay.
So welcome all, thank you. Kelly and Lena, it's great to see you both tonight, dear friends.
Yeah.
So I just recently retired. I was the director of the Teaching English as a Second Language program at the University of Kentucky. It was a graduate program resulting in a master's degree or certification in ESL or EFL. So that's my background is in second language acquisition and linguistics. I've taught English overseas in the South Pacific in a small country called Tonga and also in Japan. And I've taught in the US at many levels, elementary school, high school, and adult education programs. So let me see if I have a question for you all. Let me see. I'm going to try to use the chat tonight. So see if I can give you I have a couple of questions for you. Two questions. If you could just each briefly say, you can type it into the chat or you can call out yourself and just verbally. But I'm just curious who your English students are and what ages. Feel free to use the chat or
evening, everybody.
Talk. Teresa.
Yes.
What age group are you working with?
Excuse me. Good evening.
What age are your students?
My students are from 12 to 15 years.
Okay, great.
Hi, Francis. My students range. I do one-on-one classes mainly. So I have a 7-year-old, a 9-year-old, some teenagers, and mostly adults.
Mostly adults. So the full range. Yeah.
Yes.
And Lisa, where are they from, mainly?
A large majority are from Chile. The kids and teenagers are from Europe, the Czech Republic, and Italy. Yes, those are most of them.
Good.
I'm a teacher of English, by the way. I teach high school teenagers.
Okay.
In Ecuador, South America. I've been teaching English for quite a few years since I came from Chicago.
Okay. I see a lot of people are working with teenagers. Anyone else you want to share with us?
Okay, I also work with small kids between 5 to 10 years old. I'm also teenagers. And on Saturdays, I'm working a part-time job at a university with adults, the ages between 18 to, 30 or more.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And what about Licenciado Toscano?
Hello, good evening. Currently, I'm working with the students from 12 to 15 years old.
Okay,
I'm a teacher in the high school. Banyak Dawasa, Nepal.
thank you.
Oh, we
Good
got.
evening. Good evening, everyone.
Mhm.
This is Paulina talking, and my students are over 30 years old. Most of them are teachers as a second language and professionals over 40 years. The teachers would like to achieve a better pronunciation and pass the EFC or IELTS test, and professionals, most of them are abroad, like Canada, Melbourne, or in Mexico. So they are looking to have a good level of English so they could succeed in their careers. It's two different targets. And they are training also for IELTS.
Right.
Oh, and here is Maria Gomez. Maria, thank you. Maria, I don't know if you've met Dr. Balley, Francis Balley. Maria,
Hi, yes. Hi, Lina.
hi.
Hi, how are you? Yes, I'm just joining. I'm driving. So
Oh,
yes, so
Maria is from Peru, and she got her PhD in public health.
Ah,
And she was an ESL student. She was my student. But
yes,
I'm so proud of Maria because she's helping the Hispanic community, telling them all about everything, all the whatever vaccines are important, whatever are important. So she does a great service to the community of Lexington.
so Maria is also in Lexington.
oh, welcome,
yes.
Maria.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and thank you for this for this presentation or just discussion. Lina was my teacher. Lina is my is an awesome teacher, my ESL teacher. When I came here to Lexington to study English. So
Hello.
it has been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
So back to Francis. For those who weren't here when I introduced him, Dr. Francis Balley is a retired professor at the University of Kentucky, and he is an author of a book about memory and language, and also a very good friend and a wonderful person. So continue, Francis, if you don't mind.
Sure. So welcome all. As you can see, there's a wide range of students that people are working with, from small children to adults. One thing we all have in common is that we're language teachers, and I want to focus on that, kind of on that level. We'll be looking at some age issues around memory as part of the presentation tonight, but much of what we're going to talk about is applicable to everyone. So it applies to all age of students. All students have some kind of working memory, and it plays an important role in their learning. So I'm going to share the screen now. And so this is, I titled this presentation, Working Memory in the ESL Classroom. The agenda, we just did introductions. I wanted to find out a little bit about who you were and who you're working with. And then I want to entertain 3 questions. What is working memory? What role does working memory play in learning, particularly second language learning? And then how can understanding working memory help language teachers? One thing I want you to know, I'm happy to leave time at the end of the presentation for discussion, but also feel free to ask questions at any time. I've built in opportunities for discussion, so don't be shy. We're a small group. Your teacher Kelly says that you're very friendly, so I think we can have a good conversation. So if you have a question, just jump right in. We're going to be looking at human memory, and we're going to focus primarily on working memory. And I'm going to talk a lot more about what that is. But the other kind of memory is long-term memory. So if you learn a new vocabulary word, you're putting that into long-term memory. If you're learning how to play the piano or keyboard, that's being stored in long-term memory. If you're learning, memorizing a dialogue for a class, that's in long-term memory. Working memory is really something that's really quite distinct. Everyone uses working memory. It's the place where information kind of flows in and then it gets connected to long-term memory. So it's a strange form of memory in that it has very little storage capacity. So it can only store just a tiny bit of information. So I think of working memory as the front door of learning. The real goal of learning is to create representations in long-term memory. But you have to put it into long-term memory first, and that's where working memory plays a role. So it's the very first part of learning something is activating working memory. I'm going to talk a lot more about how that works. Two psychologists from Britain, Gather-Cole and Alloway, describes working memory this way. It's like a mental workspace or notepad where we manipulate important information in the course of our everyday lives. So think of this situation. Someone tells you their phone number and you can't write it down immediately. You have to kind of keep it inside your head. And then maybe 1 minute later, you can write it down or put it into your phone. So during that 1 minute, you're using working memory to retain that phone number. So that's an example where working memory is functioning in just everyday life. So we use working memory when we're comprehending language, when we're doing a math problem in our head, anytime we're connecting new information to old, working memory is playing that essential role there. When we're translating from one language to another. When you notice something new, the new thing is in your working memory. So working memory is essential to learning. And one thing I want to say about, I want to go back for a second to this memory chart here, this human memory. One thing that is really interesting about memory is that the purpose of memory, long-term memory, is to help us solve problems for the future. So memory is oriented or directed to the future, not to the past, but to the future. We use memory to create representations and knowledge, and then we use that knowledge to figure out problems for tomorrow. So we always think about memory as being connected to the past, but it actually is connected to the future. So I want to show you how working memory plays a role in that process. So let me ask you a question. What does it mean when I say that memory helps us prepare for the future? What do you think what do you think that means?
Angelica, I bet you want to answer that question. I see you.
Okay, I think, thank you. Good evening. I think that if you have the working memory, you can connect with the things with possible happening in the future. If you have the knowledge, you can relate what you know with things that could be or could appear in the future, as you said.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so we're storing knowledge, but it's for to help us with tomorrow's problems. And I think this is what you're saying. Yes. Other ideas? What do you?
Martha from Greece. She's the one that gets up early in the morning, single mom.
Is that Martha? Ah, yes. Hi, Martha. So what do you
Hi,
think?
everyone.
Welcome.
I could think of an example. For example, when you have knowledge for something, the next time you're going to do it in the future, you're going to do it in a better way.
Good.
This
Yeah.
is what I can think of.
Okay. Nice. I see people are also posting in the chat. Memory is the most important resource for learning. I agree.
I have a question actually. So I used to think that memory is related with the past as well as the present and of course the future, because for example, I'm thinking about the previous knowledge that we used before teaching a new topic to our students. So in that case, I'm using the past. And when I'm teaching, this is the future, but of course, the knowledge that I'm acquiring, it's going to be used perhaps in the future. But now my question is, you said, and you are the expert, the professional, how is it possible that the long-term memory is connected directly with the future? So I'm expecting that answer because we used to be confused or maybe wrong in that expectation that the memory was related with past, present, and future. So I would like to know that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I tried to put it into the chat, this idea that we use background knowledge with our students, and that's really important thing to help them understand what we're doing. But we're using experiences from the past, but the idea is from an evolutionary point of view, why did we develop memory? We developed memory not so we can think about the past, but so we can think about the future. And so that's what I mean by that. Yes, but I agree with you. We try to draw on our students' backgrounds, but it's to solve the problem of today or tomorrow, which is how to understand language in our classes. Yeah. Okay, so let me go back to this. So we got, we're going to focus primarily on working memory, but the two systems work together really closely. And so I'll kind of show you how those two systems, working memory and long-term memory, kind of connect.
I'm so sorry for interrupting, but Raquel, I guess she has a question. When there is a hand there, that means that person wants to participate. So Raquel, will you please?
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about the pre-existing knowledge that the students have. As English teacher, we need to connect this pre-existing knowledge with the new knowledge that the students are going to learn. So I think that this refers to the future of the students that gain in order to help them with their education. Maybe this is the idea or no?
Yes, I think that's, you're on the right path there. So it's really about connecting the long-term memory with the new information coming in. That's the kind of the function of working memory. And that's why it plays such a big role in learning, is that it's like that first step. So when new information comes into our brains, we either have to process it quickly and connect it to long-term memory, or we lose it. And so what I want to show you is how fragile working memory is, that it's very, very limited. And it's so we're always having problems with it. And so that's why I think it's interesting for language teachers to look carefully at. I've talked about the fact that working memory is very limited. It's limited in two ways. one, in terms of time, it stores information just for a couple of seconds. And then either you use it in some way or you lose it. It's sort of like a refresh button. You know, you every couple of seconds, it starts over again. And so when new information rushes into working memory, we have to connect it right away to long-term memory, or it's gone. So it's limited by time. It's also limited by capacity. So it can only store only a small amount of information at any one time. It's only just a few words, a few symbols, a few numbers, and then after that, it's too much. So it's very strange. Normally, we think of memory as being something that lasts a very long time, but working memory doesn't work that way. It's limited in terms of time and how much information can go in there. So do you know this? Do you know what a fire hose is? You know, when there's a fire and the firemen come to help put out the fire in the house, and they have this big hose and the water comes out. That's very powerful water. And for many students, I think they experience our classroom like a fire hose. It's just all this information is coming at them very, very fast. You're talking quickly, or they're supposed to be reading quickly. They're listening to people talk, and it's like a fire hose for them. It very quickly becomes too much information, and then they kind of shut down. So working memory plays kind of that essential role in there. They're trying to make that connection, but it's just it can be too much information. As language teachers, we provide maybe too much information sometimes. Okay, so any questions about this idea that working memory is both limited in terms of time and storage capacity? Anybody want to ask any questions about that?
Yeah, I think when the working memory, for me, I think is when you start learning something. It's connected to the long-term memory, right?
Correct.
That's where I understood.
Yes. So if we want to store something for a long time, it has to connect to long-term memory. Working memory is just a short-term space for new information to come into, and then it either disappears or it gets connected. So yes.
But long-term memory, that means longs more time in your brain or keeps forever, probably.
Yeah, well, yeah, it may keep it forever, or it may keep it only for, a short time, a few hours or something. It depends on the situation, but yes, it's much longer.
Or how you practice. If you keep on practicing, you won't forget.
That's right. That's right. You have to keep activating it. But notice every time you practice, it has to go through working memory. So that's where it flows in, then you connect it again and again till eventually it becomes permanent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Working memory is I understand. I think is connect the all knowledge with the new knowledge, and where is the objective for the future? What do you need for the future?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Connecting new knowledge with old knowledge. And the goal is to help with the future. That's it, exactly. Okay.
I have a question, please.
Yes, please.
Are there some tips to increase the capacity of understand better? For example, in our students.
Yeah. Okay, this is one of the things that's really interesting about working memory is that it is very limited, and it seems to be limited for everyone. So it's a kind of a problem for all of us. And even the most intelligent person you meet doesn't really have a better working memory. In fact, they may have a worse working memory than you do. And so everyone is pretty limited in that way. There's a researcher in Japan that's shown that in some situations, there's a chimpanzee that has a better working memory than humans.
Oh,
So it seems to be like a biological thing. And so even if we practice with working memory, it doesn't seem to get better. Long-term memory is different, but working memory looks like it's kind of a biological constraint. It's connected to being human, and humans have a certain kind of working memory, and that's it.
thank you.
Yeah.
Somebody's in the bus and is saying hello to us. I think it's Gladys Espinosa. Yeah, she's in the bus, but she's attending the class.
Hi,
Look,
Gladys. Welcome. Awesome.
that's awesome, Francis.
You got a couple of questions
Hi,
from
everyone.
Ed and Carlos.
As you know, I'm come back home now, but I'm in the bus and it's a little bit difficult to hear you because it is noisy here.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, I'm going to move on to a little bit more discussion of working memory so you can get a better idea for it. So one of the things I think about with working memory is a kind of bottleneck. We have all this information flowing in, and we have this wonderful long-term memory system, but everything has to go through this tiny working memory. And so it's a big problem for us as teachers. It's a big problem for learners. And so if we can figure out more about working memory, I think we can make ourselves stronger as teachers. I want to do just a little bit of a test of your working memory. And just it's kind of a demonstration. It's not really a test of your memory. It's just a way for you to kind of connect up to the memory idea. So I'm going to just give you, let's see. Okay, so let me explain what I'm going to do. What I'd like to do is I'll give you something to, like a little problem or something to do, and then I'd like you to give your answers in the chat. Can we try that? And what we're focusing here on is this is an example of working memory. So let's see if we can make it work. Okay. The way this works is we start easy and we get harder. So, okay, so here's the first working memory problem. I want you to do this only in your head. So don't do the math. Don't use your phone. Just think in your head what the answer is. The first one is. Okay, so here's a math problem for you. What is 7 plus 3? Just put your answers into the chat. Okay, that's pretty easy. You're connecting up my question with what you know in long-term memory, and you're coming up with this answer. So let's try another one. Okay, second one. What is 12 multiplied by 4? 12 multiplied by 4. Okay, beautiful. All right, let's try another one.
Yeah.
What is 47 multiplied by 68?
68.
Yeah, do this in your head, please.
No head.
That was a hard one.
So, Yeah, no idea. Exactly. What happened? So the first two were quite easy. You were doing it inside your head. That's working memory. The third one, it is very difficult to do this because the limitations of working memory. You have only a short time to work with your numbers, and your storage capacity is very small. So when you try to multiply, the process gets very complicated very quickly. So that's just a small example of working memory. Let me give you another example. But any question, anything you want to say? Okay, let's try this. I'm going to have you reverse numbers. Okay, so let's say I want you to reverse the number. So if I say the number 1, 4, you write 4, 1. So you take the numbers and you reverse them. So let me give you an example. If I write this number, I want you to reverse the numbers inside your head and then write the answer. What's the answer? 154. Yes. So that's what I mean by reverse. Yeah. So by reversing, you should have 154. Okay, let's try a couple numbers. So reverse this number. Okay, here's the first one. Reverse this number. 3, 8, 4, 6. 3, 8, 4, 6. Type your answer into the chat. Here was the number. So it should be. So I said 3, 8, 4, 6. So you write 6, 4, 8, 3. Okay, let's try one more. Okay, next one. 5, 8, 1, 3, 4, 0. Please reverse. 5, 8, 1, 3, 4, 0. One, 8, 5. So when you're doing that, it's working memory. So what we're doing is kind of demonstrating your working memory capacity. So I have a question for you. I asked you for this one. Hold on one sec. Put it into the chat. I asked you for this one, 47 times 68. Many people said impossible to do inside your head. Why is that so hard?
Because we don't practice math every day. So for some people, it's difficult. For others, might be easier.
Yes. If the more you know about math, the easier it would be. Yeah. So
maybe
yes.
if you have a technique, probably you can do faster.
Yeah,
you might need some technique to do that.
Some kind of strategy, technique.
Exactly.
Right, right. So if I did this, and ask you to solve that inside your head, could anybody do it?
No, I can't.
Yeah, there might be some math person that could do it, but I could not. And I expect most people could not. Because working memory, so that problem here that I put is being stored in working memory. It only stores for a short time, and it has very little information in there. So, and we have nothing we can connect to long-term memory. The answer for this problem that I posted is not in my long-term memory. I have to figure it out myself. And when I'm figuring it out, I'm figuring it out in working memory. And because working memory is small and fragile, it's very difficult.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Yes, for example, what activities can I for my students to become a long memory? What activities?
So could you say your question again?
What activities a professor or teacher can do for your students to improve the memory?
I think if I understand the question to be, what can we do to improve memory? And I would say we can
Yes.
we cannot improve working memory. We can improve, I think, long-term memory, but working memory is a biological constraint. We haven't found any human that has an amazing working memory. Everybody's working memory is very small. Some people have amazing long-term memory, but working memory, no.
Can I ask it a little bit differently?
Sure.
How much repetition do we need for the working memory to become long-term memory? Does it need years? How much repetition do we need?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. Because some things we seem to learn very quickly, and some things are very difficult. And so if something we're learning, it looks similar to what we've already learned before, then we learn it more quickly. But if you're learning something brand new, like when I was learning Japanese, for example, new writing systems, new sound system, and everything was so new that it took time to sort that out. And so that's not really easy to answer that question.
Okay. I understand. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Maria, go ahead, please. I think you have a question or argument.
Yes, hi. I have a question.
Okay.
So what I understand is that working memory, is it just about thinking, right? Because if I write down, the number that you gave us, we can do it quicker.
Yes. So
It's
working
just
memory
about thinking.
Yes, working memory is about thinking.
Okay.
Yes, it's where we think. It's the space or the notepad where we put information so we can think about it.
Okay. And then my second question is, so do you think that working memory can be improved just by repetition of, let's say, when learning a language?
I don't think we can improve working memory. Our hope is that we can change long-term memory. The working memory is
Okay.
just a very short, like a step that, you know, it's the first step, but it's not the final step. And so,
Okay.
so we have to use working memory to change long-term memory.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Will I say something also?
Yes, please.
Please let me know if I'm right. So as you said, working memory, it's something brief and perhaps it's the beginning to store information in the long-term memory, because when we're doing repetition or when we practice something, that's going to stand in our brain for a longer time. So in summary, my question is, not actually a question. You said before that if we don't use something, so we'll probably lose it. And that's maybe the main aim of the purpose of this group. It was created several years ago because I felt that I was losing my English. So I thought that the best way to keep my English or to develop my English was using it with English native speakers or with people who use it frequently, like the teachers. So now I think that I have improved, and that's because I'm using my knowledge. So that's long-term memory. Otherwise, working memory could be, for example, the exercises you already did, and I was able to do most of them, but now I don't remember them. So it's kind of just, working memory is just like mental exercises to develop our brain or not.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that's a good example. Yes. Yeah, we probably can't remember those numbers we were using a minute ago. I think of like you know, if you have a whiteboard and a teacher writes something on it and then you erase it. So now it's gone. And so you have to write it again if you want it, or you have to find it from some other place like long-term memory. So one thing I want to note here is that working memory is closely associated with attention. So what we're paying attention to is what we're activating in working memory. So right now you're maybe you're listening to my voice, and so that's something that you're paying attention to. And that's your working memory. As you try to understand what I'm saying or what one of your classmates is saying, that is activating your working memory. So attention is a big part of working memory. So I just want to summarize. Working memory processes new information. It's a very limited storage. And working memory connects new information to long-term memory. I think as language learners, oftentimes you're juggling many things at once. And so I wanted to show you this kind of image that I call it juggling. Juggling is when you have all these things in the air and you're trying to keep them up. So working memory is always about juggling. You always have so much information coming in, and it's easy to overwhelm. This poor man is, you know, he has too much stuff happening. I want to say something about cognitive load. This man's cognitive load is too high. He has too much stuff. So the cognitive load is the relative load of ideas and actions that a person can process in working memory at any given time. That's the cognitive load. So you can have high cognitive load and it's too much. You can have low cognitive load and it's boring. And so you're trying to find just the right balance. Learners' working memory can easily become cognitively overloaded when juggling a complex task. or you're trying to do multiple tasks at the same time. Tasks that require conscious attention to complete successfully. If you really have to focus on something to do it, then it's easy to overwhelm the cognitive load system. So I'm going to use this idea of cognitive load to connect with working memory. I'm going to stop here for a second and just see, do you have questions?
Maybe could I make a question, please?
Yes.
Okay, we are talking about long-term memory and short-term memory. You also was talking about, you know, if we, you know, put in our desk a lot of information for our students, we can overload them. Maybe could you say us, or could you suggest us how many minutes we could use to give information to our students?
Yeah, you know, it's a very difficult question because it entirely depends on how much knowledge they have in long-term memory. So if someone's speaking to you in your native language, they can speak very quickly and you can understand everything. But when you're doing a second language, the words are coming in so quickly that you don't have time to process them. And maybe you have some gap in your long-term memory, so you can't catch all the details. And so then you have kind of failure of working memory, which is failure of comprehension.
Okay.
Really, working memory is about how you comprehend language, or how you, when you're trying to speak, how you put it together to form a phrase or a sentence.
Yeah, but you say when we give you know, a lot of information to our students, we tend to overwhelm them. You
Right.
know, recharge. You know, they sometimes feel tired with a lot of information. The question was how many information we could you know, as administrate or give to our students. You know, a minute or 2 minutes, or just 5 words or 5 new vocabulary. I don't know. Could you tell us how can we give information to our students that could improve, you know, working memory?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because it depends on you knowing your students very well.
Oh yeah, great.
So if you know what your students can do, and if you're talking about teaching English, then you can control the speed of the information coming at your students so that they can comprehend it. But it depends on their proficiency level. So the higher the proficiency, obviously, the faster you can process things through working memory because you have more information in long-term memory. So if you're working with beginners or low intermediate, it's very easy to overwhelm working memory because they don't have so much knowledge in the long-term memory yet.
Yeah, you are talking about that we have to realize, you know, the age of a student in order to give information. Yeah, that's the answer. Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you.
The age and the proficiency
yeah.
level. Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to show you a little graph here of working memory. So if you look on the left here, you see sensory input. So this is maybe something they're reading or something they're listening to in an English class. Then you have working memory, and you have short-term and active. And notice working memory is connected to long-term memory. Long-term memory connects to working memory connects to long-term memory. So everything is connected together. It's one system. We also have something called central executive, which controls attention. So there's a kind of a rule in psychology that what you pay attention to today is what you remember tomorrow. And so what central executive does is focus your attention and then allow you to process information in working memory. So I want to show one thing about kind of some key ideas here about working memory. It's a limited processor. We've talked about that. It's limited in time and storage capacity. It's designed to be very good at pattern matching. So if you see the same pattern coming in that you already have stored in long-term memory, you very quickly make the connection. It also connects to chunking of meaningful information. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about chunking in a minute. And also automaticity. If you can, the faster you can connect long-term memory to new information, the more likely you can remember it, comprehend it. So speed is very important because the working memory only lasts a couple of seconds. So if you're not really fast, you lose the information.
I think Carlos and Licenciado Toscano, they have questions because their hands are up. Could them?
Say that
Okay.
again. Sorry, I couldn't hear you well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My question is there any relationship between the experience that you have between working memory and the experience? I mean, for example, when you are with your students, you have applied any kind of methodology so as to teach any language or any part of the information that you have so as to your students learned. But you remember that the methodology applied previously didn't work. And you have to remember that methodology didn't work, and you have to apply another methodology, put it in practice the working memory. I mean, when you said before that working memory help us to solve problems in a moment. So that's my question.
Yeah, I want to say one thing about solve problem. I don't mean just like a math problem or something like that. I mean, a problem could be what is the meaning of a sentence written in English? A problem could be, what does this word mean? The problem could be, what's the grammar pattern I should use when I'm writing this idea? So it's everyday problem, not fancy, physics problem, math problem, something like that. Just everyday problems. So I think as teachers, what we're trying to do is build up long-term memory so that when students encounter something new in working memory, they can easily comprehend it. And so our primary responsibility is to work with long-term memory. But our challenge is that we have to work with our students very limited memory. And I want to say something. Someone wrote about what about the idea that our brain just can memorize 7 things at the same time? That's an idea that shows our limitation, that there's only a little bit of information that can be in the working memory before or otherwise we get overloaded. So, and many people have said it's around seven items that we can kind of keep track of at the same time. So that's where that idea of 7 comes from.
Thank you.
Carlos has a question as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. It's nice to be here. I really appreciate that you can share your time with us tonight. My question is about how to develop critical thinking, because I consider that we have this long-term memory and short-term memory, but in between, we need to develop critical thinking, and sometimes in the philosophy of education depends on the board of education of each country. You are supposed to make them think because you want them to be well, they are all entitled to their opinion, but they have to develop that. The critical thinking is something that sometimes is hard to develop. So I would like you to give us some tips, or maybe tell us how is it possible to make it work. How can we develop the critical thinking in our students, teenagers, children, adults?
You know, this is a huge issue right now. And in the United States, we're trying to teach our politicians critical thinking skills. We seem to have some kind of weakness in our political leaders who don't really have these ability right now. So we have to teach the children first, and then they'll grow up. The critical thinking is kind of, it's not connected directly to working memory. It's more a long-term memory issue, because you're I think, and maybe other people have other ideas. I see critical thinking as the ability to ask questions about issues of power, and so it's not really connected to working memory. It's more of a long-term skill that you develop in long-term memory of one, the ability to ask the question in the language of power, and then two, to feel like you have the right to do that. And do other people have other ideas about that? What do you think?
Sorry, I think that critical thinking is a kind of process. It's not easy, as many people think. We need to start with patience with our students, because they need to face some questions that invite them to think. And day by day, they are increasing they can increase their ability to develop critical thinking.
Yes,
I think that
it's a long, slow process.
And I think Ruth Fabiola had a question.
Okay.
Ruth?
No, it's okay. No question.
Well, Francis, I like your comment about one of the ways that it develops is that if people feel they have the right to ask the question, because yeah, if you can encourage that as opposed to discouraging it as an interruption, then that's like anything else that you practice, you get better at it.
Right. And the classroom should be a safe place to practice. So you should feel comfortable asking your teacher critical questions, or your classmates, etc. But well, I think we have to create our own classrooms as being places where that can develop naturally.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say something about working. Sorry, this is the wrong one. Seem to have some technical problem here. Sorry, just one sec. There we go.
We've got a big group here tonight.
Yeah, I can see that. I want to show you one thing that is helpful, and in a way, it's just the research is supporting, I think, what teachers already know. But look at this active working memory. We have something called phonological loop, and then we have a visual spatial sketchpad. So visual spatial sketchpad is basically just what we see, kind of image. But the phonological loop is something else. So this is, if you go back to my earlier example. So someone gives you their email address and you have to remember it. And you're going to have to remember it for maybe 1 minute and then you can write it down, or maybe their telephone number. So the phonological loop is when you just keep saying inside your head the same number again and again and again. Or you say their, if it's email, you say their email address again and again. So you can kind of keep it in your working memory for a little bit longer, and then you can write it down or put it into your phone. So the phonological loop is just you talking to yourself inside your head. And then a visual spatial sketchpad is just image. So the good news is that the phonological loop and the image, the visual spatial sketchpad, don't compete, so that we can, it doesn't use any extra working memory space. So they work together, not against each other. So we can have an image and also a written text, for example, in a picture we present our students. And it tends to work very well. It doesn't overwhelm them because the image and the phonologic loop kind of work on two separate memory systems. So that's why I think we can always combine image with words, because it doesn't compete with each other. So I have a question. Look at these. Now, one way that we work with long-term memory is by chunking information. So what was once maybe two things becomes just one thing. So which of these following things are chunks? And I don't know if you know this 911. It's in the US. In my country, it's this is our emergency number. So if you have a fire or you need the police. So if you look at these three, which ones do you think are chunks stored in long-term memory as a one piece?
USA.
The first, the second.
Jay? 911.
911, yes, that's a unit, right? And in my mind, it's connected. It's all one piece. What about USA? Is that a chunk?
Yeah.
Oh. Yes. What about J?
Nope.
No.
Why not?
Nope.
It's just one letter.
Yes.
There's no combination.
Yes, but it has two parts. It has the dot and then the J letter.
Okay.
So if you study a language like Arabic, Arabic has little marks above the vowels, and when people are learning Arabic, they don't pay any attention to the little dots because they're not used to those little dots, and so it's not a chunk for them, and so you have to learn over time that they're a chunk, and so like a lot of times students will leave off the dot when they're doing the J, or forget a period when they end a sentence. These are examples of where there's some kind of problem with chunks. So anyways, chunks are one of the ways we store information in long-term memory. So chunking is a process by which the mind divides large pieces of information into smaller units that are easier to retain in working memory. Because we have limited working memory, if something is a chunk, then it's much more efficient. So I talked about this phonological loop, we're talking to ourselves inside our head, maybe repeating a number or something like that. Or I often see my students, they're trying to learn a new vocabulary word. They say it to themselves very quietly, or they kind of moving their lips, and you can hear they're saying it inside their head. That's phonological loop. And then we also have image. So we have information coming into working memory from our eyes as well. I want to show you one thing that I think is really helpful. This is research originally done by Gathercole and Alloway. This is on the left here, starting with 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130. That's some kind of test of working memory. So they did some of the things we did together to test working memory is same kind of things they had students do. And then on the bottom is age. So they start at 4 and they go to 15. So notice that performance increases as students get older. So working memory is developmental. And young children have very weak working memories. And teenagers have much stronger working memories. And it develops directly across the ages. So that a 4-year-old is very weak working memory. If you ask a 4-year-old to remember 3 numbers, they won't be able to do that. If you have a 4-year-old, test them. And working memory basically develops until you're around 15, early teenage years, and then you're at adult level. So you don't develop after that. But notice, so if you're working with young children, they have very weak working memories. And so the problems that we talked about with working memory is even greater for children. Questions about that or comments? So this is a big challenge if we're working with children.
Oh.
Okay, maybe I could give a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, according to the graph, we have to pay attention to the ages of students in order to teach them, because you say that little boys have a weak working memory, and teenagers have stronger working memory. For that reason, we have to pay attention in the ages also. That is my comment.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, you're right on. So working memory develops through childhood. Also, but I want you to notice something else. This is a second graph. This is variation in working memory. So same graph on the left here is a test of performance on working memory test. And this is age 4 to 15. Notice that if you look at, let's say 7 years old, you see there's a big difference among 7-year-olds. Some are functioning quite high, some are much lower. So if you're working with 7-year-olds, you're going to have students who have working memories equivalent to a 4-year-old, and other students may be as high as a 10-year-old. So the point is there's great variation within a class. If you have a class of 10-year-old students, within that 10-year-old group, there'll be a range of working memory functions. And that's true from very young children, 4 or 5, all the way up to 14, 15. Big variation. So what are the implications of that for us as teachers?
I guess we have to repeat a lot if we have little children.
Yeah. And you know, if one student comprehends something we say or something they read, that doesn't mean that other children have comprehended that we have to check all our children, all our students. And this is not because they're not smart. They might have amazing long-term memory system, but working memory is a kind of a weakness for people. And so the only way we really know if they've comprehended or understanding our lesson is if we check with each one. And we can just expect in a normal classroom to have a lot of variation in working memory. So yes, like Lena said, we have to do a lot of repetition for our students. I want to notice also a connection with working memory around second language learners. Two researchers, Harrington and Sawyer, in 1992, found that smaller working memory capacity for English language learners in the second language as compared to first language. So they tested the working memory in their first language, and then they tested their working memory when they were speaking English, and they had weaker, smaller working memory in English. Bianca and fellow researchers in 2013 found working memory capacity varied by second language proficiency. That for whether it was adults or teenagers or young children, working memory capacity was limited in the second language, particularly for beginning level students and intermediate level students. And as you get more proficiency, then your working memory gets larger, back to similar to what you have in L1. But I mean, most of our students are beginners or intermediates, so they're having it's kind of impacted working memory. Any comments or questions about that?
Yeah, Francis, do you think that's due to the lack of chunking in the second language?
Yes, and also, Kelly, I think just the amount of information they have in long-term memory to connect to working memory. So chunking is one part of that. So if you're working with young children in a second language, their working memory is limited by their developmental stage and also by their language level. So they have very, very weak working memory. I want to show you something that I think you can connect to. Whoops, no, not that. Lost my steps here. Here we go. So when we think about sorry, when we think about cognitive load or working memory limitation, any of these things are part of our things we have to think about. Anytime we have a multi-step task, do this, then that, students get lost because of working memory overload. Anytime students are reading a class text, there's going to be some students who are going to be cognitively overloaded. Learning a new word, second language word, a new grammar pattern, meaning, discourse structure, any of those things are very difficult for working memory. Anytime you're learning new complex content, like the idea itself is really complex. That's a working memory limitation that you're going to have to work very carefully with that. And this next one is interesting. Whenever you're engaging in a new learning process, so if you're teaching them a new way to learn something, then that is takes up all the working memory space, and they can't learn the new material until they understand the new learning process. They can't do both at the same time, or it's difficult to do both at the same time. So when you're teaching them a new learning process, like a new way to study vocabulary or learning some kind of a rule for spelling, something like that, you know, you have to go very slowly because they're learning the process, and they can only focus on that. And finally, knowledge retrieval requiring explicit and conscious processing. So anytime it takes all your attention, then that is completely controlling working memory. You don't have any space left for new learning. So do you ever see examples of students learning? See if I can find it. So yes.
For example, today I taught my students about clothes words. There was an example where students need to describe or need to write what kind of clothes people wear when for playing basketball, baseball, and I give you them 2 examples. I write on the board 2 examples, and I add two sports. Some students say, "No, teacher, I can't write. No, I don't understand how to change the order of the words in order to write." So I think this is because they were cognitive overload.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah, some students catch it, and some of them no, they can't.
One thing I'll say about writing seems to be particularly difficult for cognitive load, because when you're writing, you're trying to remember the words, the grammar, punctuation, the content that you're talking about. It's just really a lot for language learners to keep track of. And so, if you think about the skills that we learn as we're in our first language, usually writing is the last skill we develop because I think it's the most difficult one, and it continues to be the most difficult in the second language. I think that's working memory limitation. Okay, does anyone else have an example where students had some kind of cognitive overload?
I would like to share with you.
Hello.
Okay.
Angelica, yes.
Oh yeah. I gave my students a short text about Mother's Day. So I said them, please read the text, and after you have to tell us what did you understand about the text. It doesn't matter if you can explain in English or in Spanish. Obviously, the response of each one of them depends on their level proficiency. Yeah, one of them understand almost the whole text, but some of them understood just a little. Yeah, I think that if they have the opportunity of reading another text with a similar topic, they can relate this kind of understanding or this kind of knowledge with the future vocabulary, grammar, etc.
Nice. Yes. Yes. So they have to activate the long-term memory,
Exactly.
but it sounds like your students in class, some students struggled with that.
Yeah.
And I think particularly when we're working with oral language, it comes so quickly that we can easily become overwhelmed in a second language. And so oral language is a particular challenge, I think. Anyone else?
I have another example. Can I talk?
Okay.
Okay. This morning we work at in the school with simple present tense and perfect tense. So I explained them a lot with many exercises that when they use the past tense, they can use also the present perfect. No. And when I was explaining, I noticed that they understood me. But when I give an exercises, they did a lot of faults. No, they can. I think when they are reading or writing the example, they forgot how they will connect both tenses. And I say why they can do it. So I think that I give them too much explanation or too much things, and not with the two. Maybe I have to do only present perfect or only past, and then after that they can mix both of them.
Excellent. Yes. Yes. So what you're talking about is you need to maybe limit a little bit the amount of information you give them at any given time. So I think that makes sense.
Yes.
Mary Elba, where are you located? I forgot.
Bolivia. I am from Bolivia.
That's right. I
Cochabamba.
remembered. I knew it was Paraguay or Bolivia. Okay.
Yes, Bolivia.
Hi.
So I see it's about time for class to finish. I'd like to finish with looking at just something that I think maybe you will connect to. Here are some things that you should look for your students. If they're overwhelmed by working memory, if they have overload, here are some things that happen in the classroom. There's confusion. There is distraction. They may express kind of frustration because they're overwhelmed. The task avoidance means they don't want to do the work. They stop working. Task abandonment, they quit because they can't do it. And finally, if you notice students, you tell them something today, but they forget everything tomorrow, this is a sign of overload. This is failure to connect new information to old, and so that they can't hold on to it. And so if you have students who you're always kind of surprised that they forgot something that you told them before, this is probably a sign that they didn't really learn it very well the first time because of overload. And I think we can, if we look at our classrooms, we can always see students having these kind of challenges. So if you're interested in working memory, when you look at your students, think about if they having some kind of problem like these.
May I ask a question?
Sure. Tanya.
You are giving us the signs, so would you please give us how we can resolve those emotions or conflicts that our students are having? Like if we see, for instance, somebody trying to avoid the task for the lesson. So what we should do?
Let me give you a couple examples here. These are some of the classroom applications. One, I think we have, as teachers, we have control over the speed of the lesson. Sometimes we call this pacing, but it's just how much material we present in 1 minute or 1 hour. So we control that. So if we see our students are struggling, we can slow the lesson down a little bit. Number two, we can combine visual and verbal information. They don't compete in working memory, so this is very useful for us. We have to make new information meaningful to our students and memorable, so it has some kind of hook or some way for them to remember it. So remember that idea that what we pay attention to today is what we remember tomorrow. So if our students can't make sense of what we're saying, or they don't really make any connection to it, they won't remember tomorrow. Number four, avoid nonsense. By that, I mean, if you can't understand if you're speaking too quickly or the written text is too difficult, they won't learn anything. And so we really have to have our language exactly at the level of our students. And then we have to do everything we can to avoid cognitive overload, which is what we've been talking about today. And we have to help them make that connection between long-term memory and the new stuff coming in. So those are some suggestions. I was wondering if you had other ideas.
No, I think they will work so fine. Thanks for the advice.
Kelly, I think we're out of time.
Okay.
Well, Francis, I thank you very much for coming and talking with us today. And I think that everybody, including me, learned some things tonight.
And I learned too.
And I've read your book, so so it's good if I can learn something. So
it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to meet you all, and thank you so much for all your comments and questions. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you very much.
And it's so good to see you, Francis.
Yeah, it's nice to see you too, Lena.
So if you
Thank you very much.
If you miss teaching these wonderful students that are so interested in learning, come back again, Francis.
Okay. Will do.
Please.
Thank you all.
Thank you for all of what you taught us. I learned a lot today. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
yes,
welcome.
thank you for your input. It was great.
Does anybody have anything that you would like to suggest for next week?
Oh,
We
everything.
have plenty of things we can do, but if you have an idea, I would like to hear it.
Maybe we can continue talk about this theme, because I think it's very important what we can do during the class in order to refresh their memories, and we don't say, oh, se olvidaron. They forgot everything that I told last week. So maybe have some techniques to help them.
I would suggest this then, that usually we have two halves to the class, and that can be our conversation part. And Francis won't be here next week, but we can all share our ideas on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And Francis, this is Mohammed from Morocco.
Oh, hello, Mohammed.
We have
Hello.
Europe,
Welcome.
North Africa. I think
Thank
we
you
have
so much.
Daisy here too from Vietnam, maybe. But
No, that's Rosie.
oh, okay. Okay.
Actually, this was an interesting topic from Mr. Francis. So I have a little question for him. How can you make the long-term memory last on our students? I see that there are many ways how to make the students learn through drawings and through different procedures to keep the long memory on track. So don't forget. So what would you suggest for the students to last longer the long-term memory on the students? Mr. Francis, this is the last question. I'm curious, from your point of view, your experience as a teacher.
I can tell you something about some research that's, I think, connects to your question. So I'm going to type something into the chat. They tested college students on their memory of some pictures, and then they had a name for each person in the picture. And one of the names was something like Mr. Baker. Okay, this is just an example. So they looked at a bunch of pictures, and then they had a bunch of names connected to the pictures, and then later on, a few days later, they asked them, could you identify the names with the pictures? So Mr. Baker, they tried this name Baker. And Baker is both a name, but also it's occupation, right? So people bake bread, right? So if they showed people just the name and a picture, Mr. Baker doesn't mean anything. It's just a name. Students had very weak memory of that. But if they showed them a picture and said, this man is a baker, he bakes bread, they remembered that name better. Because with baking bread, you have many connections. You have smell, you have taste, you use maybe every day. But if it's just a name, no connection at all. So the more connections people make to something, a new word, for example, the more likely they can remember it.
And they will learn more vocabulary too, related to the bakery, the baker. They will learn tasting, they will learn smell, they will learn anything related with the bakery, showing a picture. That's a good technique. For me, I think that's nice and keeps the long-term memory too.
Right.
Remember looking at the pictures. Nice.
Because the students already have many connections to baker in their head, and even in their first language. So they had many background knowledge, but if it's just a name, no, nothing. It's just, there's no connection between the face and the name. So
it's important to use pictures or drawings or something like that in order to make the students catch the meaning of the words.
Right. Agreed.
Excellent. That is awesome. This is an outstanding explanation, Mr.
Okay, before you leave, let me say thank you very much first to Mamelina and Daddy Kelly for inviting you, Dr. Francis. I'm really happy and thankful with God because we're having highly qualified teachers who are teaching us, giving your time for free. And this is kind of weird because you usually are paid a lot of money because of your knowledge. You have studied a lot. And this is wonderful because when I was studying here at the university in Ibarra, Ecuador, all of my teachers were non-English native speakers, and I learned, but not as well like with you, teachers like you. I had the opportunity, the chance of studying at the University of Kentucky, and I'm so glad and happy for that. For that reason, I started this project, and thank you very much because you're not sharing your knowledge just because you're retired. That's because you're outstanding people. So Daddy Kelly, Mamelina, thank you very much. Dr. Francis, as well, thank you. God bless you because this is a huge opportunity of learning. So this is it. So no words. That's it.
Thank you so much.
A question, an extra question, Doctor. Could you please tell us the names of your books? Because you can read in 3 books. Are they available online or do we have to buy them? I know they are going to be expensive as education in the United States. So could you please write the name of your books? Are they available?
Books here are so expensive.
Yes, they are.
Let's see.
So the title is Memory at Work. And there's, I have a co-author, so it's Bailey and Pransky. Yes, it's on Amazon. Everything is on Amazon. I don't like it, but it's, yes, everything's on Amazon. Okay, fine.
Amazon is the press?
No, Amazon's just a bookseller.
Ah.
The publisher is, yes.
Let's see.
It's just a chunk, ASCD. And it was published in 2014.
May be able to get some information on that.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I can give the reference. No. One second.
Memory at Work in the Classroom.
Yeah, that's the.
Let me try again.
Probably look that up.
Yeah, we can look at Amazon and put it there.
See if I can.
Okay, so I will end here, but it was lovely working with you all. And Kelly, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you so much.
A pleasure.
Thank you.
It's always
Take
good
care,
to
all.
see you. Francis is also my former kayaking buddy, so I miss him for more than one reason.
And me as well.
Bye, Francis. Thank you for
Okay.
doing these.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take care, all. Bye.
God bless you.
Thank you
God
very
bless you.
much.
Thank you for
Thanks so much. See you next week.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
God bless
It
you,
was a
Mr. Francis.
pleasure.